Hi, how you doing? This is Don Linky here with What Makes an Artist, and we have another interview coming at you. This time with my friend Matthew Rotker-Lynn. Matthew was a student of mine when he was about 15 years old. He's now 22 years old. Is that right?
That's right.
And time flies, I guess. That's what the meaning of this whole interview. He's getting there fast. Thing is, Matthew came with a lot of talent, and he has continued to develop over the years. He is now in his third year, I believe, at the fourth year. Oh my God, time really does fly. So at City College in New York, where he has been studying with all kinds of people and getting out and playing with said people too. Peter Bernstein, Richard Smith, is that
Sean Smith.
Sean Smith, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I'll let him kind of pick it up from here. Let us know what he's been doing. Primarily, we're going to skip over his early years with me, and we're going to get to the meat of where he has been for the last 4 years in the Big Apple there. And so, how has it been?
Of late, it's been good. I've been getting to play some gigs a couple times a week now.
Yeah.
I'm doing some teaching as well.
Great.
And in my free time, I like to go to jam sessions and sit in at people's gigs.
Right.
And
Absolutely. Sure.
As much as I can.
So that's been an incline over the years.
Yes.
And obviously when you first got there, and I think this is worthy of note too, like young guy takes off from Milwaukee, Wisconsin and goes to this big city with a notable array of incredible pro guitar players, but also I'm sure a notable array of student guitar players.
Yes.
So when you first got there, how did you feel about your level, I guess you could say, competitive level?
I was a bit disillusioned maybe because I knew internally that I could be very good, but the other skill that I didn't have at the time was the ability to meet people and put myself out there and play, which is something I had to learn over time.
Yeah, and that's for anybody in any occupation. I think that's a feeling of vulnerability.
Yes.
You got to kind of let that go and realize that your ambition to be one of them is more important.
Yes.
I guess, right?
Absolutely.
That seems to be what you accomplished in these last few years.
Yeah, the last couple of years or so, I just found it easier to put that aside.
Yeah.
And I was able to meet the people I needed to meet and start getting some of the places I wanted to get.
Right. And I guess your goal comes into that change or that development in your character or in your approach to this thing, meaning that the goal itself is so significant. It takes other people to get you there.
Yes.
So you actually have to meet people.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes. One of my earliest mentors in New York was the drummer Rodney Green.
Yeah.
He played with Mulgrew Miller and Charlie Hayden. And he said to me that this business is all about stepping stones. It's all about meeting somebody and getting a connection for this thing so that you can get a connection for this other thing you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And over time, a web is created.
Exactly. That's a great thought. And also levels are attained.
Yes.
In that process.
Exactly.
I think sometimes, I don't want to be critical of the smaller town or smaller metropolitan area of, say, Milwaukee. But the young musicians get educated in the music and they probably get a good background, but that it seems to me we're failing a little bit of doing that stepping stone thing. They're either getting accepted right away because they can sort of play or even play very well.
Yes.
But I think it takes a little, and you let me ask you this, because another question comes to mind with this idea of meeting people and stepping stones and going up the ladder rung by rung. But do you feel that in the sense of like wanting to be around the older musicians out there?
Yes, I think that's always what I've desired. I can't speak for other people, but I think jazz is a folk art, and one engages in learning with it by being around the elders and soaking up the wisdom.
Yeah.
And it's passed down generation to generation, and I think all of us want to be part of that process in one way or another.
Yeah, and of course the generation to generation, the source of this music that we're calling jazz for the time being. We might go off on a tangent about the description of the music that we're talking about, but it is a Black American. I like to say that it's the black man's response, artistic response, to his experience
Yes.
in the new land, in the new world,
Absolutely.
America.
Yeah.
Which of course includes all of the catastrophic events and
Yeah.
social behaviors and misbehaviors that
Absolutely.
have going on.
Yes.
And so when you speak of a folk art, the folk and the culture that we're talking about is an enslaved people
Absolutely.
who are obviously have as many geniuses per capita as any other color or race.
Absolutely.
And so we're aspiring, as white guys, we're aspiring to a different culture.
Yes.
What do you do to, and I know there's some obvious things, and you can probably speak to those, but what do you do to approach that?
I think it's like any other race relation topic in America. You have to start by listening and listening to black people talk about what this music means to them. And, you know, through osmosis, you can get a sense of what it means to feel music in that way. But I think you have to start by accepting that you don't feel music that way if you're a white person.
Right, yeah, or very few.
Yes.
Maybe if you're brought up, you know, like
Exactly.
like Steve Martin in what was the name of that movie?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
The Jerk.
The Jerk. Thanks. My producer comes in handy every once in a while, and I do mean once in a while. But so if that's the case, so we've got the little background scenario going here, and you said listen to, and I guess we can't always be in a we're not the Jerk, so we're not being brought up by a black family. We're white guys, and we're being brought up by white families, and in some of our cases, me being part of a very, very old family, I will say out front, my family would be categorized in today's world as racist, you know. So I had to find my way out of that and into an appreciation of another culture's art form.
Yes.
And you know I know what I was getting at here is the listening part to the actual music.
Yes.
That's probably the most. Is that not? You can again chime in on this. Is that the conduit that we mainly use?
I believe so, and I think it's knowing what to listen to as well.
Yeah.
And knowing what to listen for.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't recommend to a first-year jazz student to check out a bunch of ECM records with John Abercrombie and
Right.
Peter Erskine. Not that that's not great music,
Exactly.
but
right.
it's just not the roots of this music.
Right.
It doesn't have as much church or spiritual influence, and I think that's the most important essence of the music.
Yeah, I do too. The uninhibited praise
Yes.
music, you know, and then that gets turned into you use the word folk art, and I think I agree with that. But also, sometimes folk arts develop further along a path and might then be called I don't know, high art or refined art
Yes.
too, you know.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where this music has kind of risen to and continues.
Yes. And it's now gotten to a place, I think, of extreme technical mastery and virtuosity, which, you know, doesn't necessarily always have to do with the roots of the music. So I think it's important, especially now when everybody can play,
Right.
and everybody can play really well, to remember that it's not always just about playing a lot of notes.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's. But you are right. We live in a world of the sort of the everyday virtuoso. You
Yes.
know, we're only stunned by virtuosity when it's in a 6-year-old.
Yes.
You know, and then the world goes gaga for a second, and then we come back to the reality that it is the essential part of the music is the spirit of the music. So it isn't about counting notes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But as we'll display a little bit later, this young man does have some chops. So. Well, I think that's a great little starter for this. I'm going to ask you another question, and what I'd like to get here to with Matthew is the amount of time.
Yes.
And you told me once, and I you know what I'm going to say, but because I use this little ditty all the time, you know, Matthew was studying with me, and I think over a summer we had done basically the entire catalog of Charlie Parker tunes.
Yes.
And you have to remember that Charlie Parker was an alto saxophone. We're doing it on guitars, you know. And I'm giving him these tunes, you know, 10 at a time. Through the course of 3-4 months, maybe, he had pretty much exhausted the repertoire. And I was sort of confounded because it took me a lot longer than that. But I said to you, how are you, you know, I'm kind of irritated, to be honest with you. And I'm saying, hey, you know, how are you learning so much material in such a short time? And you said, do you remember?
I said time management.
Yeah. He said, I guess I have good time management skills.
Yeah.
So I guess that's true. And so that probably is part of the secret.
It is, and you know, I think the more serious you get about it, the less it becomes about time management, and the more it becomes about, all right, I have 30 minutes now where I'm not doing anything, let me practice.
Right. Well, in a sense, that is time management.
Well, yeah, you're right.
Or it's time economy.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, especially for things like maintenance. If you get 5 minutes, just to maintain on a couple of tunes,
Exactly.
you know, like just to run through them once, or maybe try to do them in a different key or
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
You know, just
Anything to keep yourself sharp.
Yes, yeah. And that brings me and yet to another, because you're just allowing me to go from question to question with your answers. I appreciate that. It's great. But the idea of maintenance on a repertoire.
Yes.
Now, obviously, there's several ways to do that. But what's your secret to try to maintain as many tunes in your head and your hands as possible?
It's always to play them with other people, because I can't even count on my two hands the number of tunes I've learned just in my room by myself that I forgot and
Right.
I can no longer play because I never played them with other people.
Yeah.
But when you play them with other people, it just activates a different part of your brain.
Yep.
And you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
So anytime I learn a new tune, I always play it at least 4 or 5 times. Sessions, gigs.
Yeah,
whenever
bring it
I
up all the time when
Yes.
it's a new tune.
Annoy people with it.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. We have to play Bye Bye Blackbird.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, but I'm doing it with some different changes now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, listen, we're going to actually take a little break here and maybe play a tune or two for you. I can maybe ask you to do a solo, and if you wouldn't mind, I'll play bass with you on a duo. And so let's do that now, and I'm going to come back with one revisitor or one new question for Matthew when we wrap this interview up. So thanks a lot. Let's
Thanks
go
for
play.
having me on. All right. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So that was a swinging little session there with Matthew Rotker-Lynn. Um, you know, I said earlier before we played um, that I wanted to follow up with a question, and it does occur to me that at 22 years old, white, and now being drawn, having been drawn to this music over a period of time, where does the confidence come to say that you can participate in this community of rich community of Black American music without feeling like you're you're robbing from something for your own benefit?
Yes. Well, it comes from my experience. I've been asked to play by a lot of people who had come from that culture, and a lot of times I've been the only white person in the band.
Yeah.
And
Which is really cool.
it's really, yeah.
I mean, honestly, for a white guy, I don't mean to go off on this race thing, but for a white guy in an all-black band, if it's swinging band, it's like you can't get any better than that.
Yeah, and I think they don't look at me as someone who's looking to rob their culture and profit from it. They see me as someone who wants to be a part of it and wants to go through the same thing with them. And I think that's the big difference. You know, if like you move into a Black neighborhood but you shop at Whole Foods, you know, you're not really part of the community. But if you shop at local grocery stores, then you're helping them and you're being part of it and interacting with them. And I think that's
And you're not intimidated by it, and you're not
No.
afraid of it. You know, this fear-mongering about in race relations today more than we've seen it in a long time.
Yeah.
You gotta display your soul a little bit.
Yeah,
to
of course.
people.
Of course, but that's just people in general.
Absolutely, right. And there is the secret. We're all just generally people.
Yeah.
So you gotta give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely.
You gotta accept the discipline that goes along with
Absolutely.
it. You've got to absorb from a person to person real relationship.
Absolutely.
The music which is by show me how you did that.
Yes.
You know, like literally by rote, not necessarily. I mean, we all use the written page, and that's it's a good system. You know, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not the core of this system. The core of this system is, like you said before.
Yeah, and it's not about I'm trying to imitate your music. It's about I'm trying to be inspired by it.
Wow,
and channel
yeah.
that inspiration.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thought. Okay, well, listen, this is Matthew Rotker-Lynn, guitarist extraordinaire, plays a little bass too, and I got a feeling at some point in time he'll probably be equally good on the bass without even trying, because he's got good time management skills. Remember that. So, man, thank you so much, as you always come back and see me when you're in town, and I will always appreciate that.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And thank you. This is What Makes an Artist.